She was mocked for being different, laughed at for drawing when others talked. But her silence hid a brilliance no one saw coming. When the very man who dismissed her collapses without warning, it's her sketchbook that holds the key. A life-saving drawing from a girl no one believed in. This isn't just a story about art. It's about judgment, redemption, and the power of seeing what others ignore. The quiet artist will change the way you look at everyone, including yourself. Clara Jameson sat in the second row, third seat from the left, in the school auditorium. Her usual spot. Her hands moved softly, almost invisibly, across the page of her sketchbook as the school principal's voice echoed from the stage. Discipline is the foundation of excellence. Principal Edward Mallory boomed through the microphone, waving one hand while the other remained tucked stiffly behind his back. And that's why we hold assemblies like this, to set a higher bar. The room of middle schoolers shifted uncomfortably in their metal chairs. No one dared whisper, though a few yawned or tapped their sneakers against the polished floor. But Clara wasn't paying attention to the speech. Her world existed within the soft boundaries of graphite and paper. She was shading the curve of a man's jawline, a figure with tired eyes and slightly hunched shoulders. Not a fantasy character or superhero this time. No, this one was real. It was Principal Mallory. Her pencil scratched delicately, adding lines of sweat she had noticed gathering on his brow during yesterday's announcements. He kept pressing his hand to his chest. Subtle. Most people missed it. Clara didn't. She never missed the small thing. Her mother had once told her, "You have a brain that sees differently." Clara. That's not a flaw. It's a gift. That was before the cancer. Before the hospital nights filled with medical charts and whispered prayers. Before Clara started living with Grandma Rose in a small house that smelled like lavender and wood polish. "Hey." The voice cut through the silence like a whip. Clara froze. From the stage, Principal Mallory pointed a rigid finger. "You, second row. Third seat." Every head in the auditorium turned. Dozens of eyes landed on her. "You think now is the time to doodle cartoons," he barked. Clara's hands clutched her notebook. Her lips parted, but no words came. "Bring it here." She didn't move. Now. Miss Rivera, her homeroom teacher, stood awkwardly from the side aisle. "Principal Mallory, perhaps we can." "It's all right, Miss Rivera. If a student chooses to disrespect the time we've all set aside, the lesson should be public." Clara slowly rose from her chair and walked up to the stage, her sneakers whispering against the polished floor. She handed over her notebook without looking up. Mallory flipped it open and held a page aloft. This is what Clara decided was more important than learning. Drawing. Scattered laughter trickled through the crowd. Clara shrank, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "Now, perhaps I'm flattered," Mallory said, chuckling mirthlessly. "But this isn't preparation for the real world. This is escapism, childish nonsense." Clara's throat tightened. Her sketchbook, her safe space. Her voice was in his hands, and he was tearing it down. "Sit," Mallory ordered. She walked back slowly, cheeks burning, notebook still in his grasp. After the assembly, Clara waited until most students had cleared out before approaching him. "See, can I have it back?" she whispered. He didn't even look at her. "You'll get it when I'm sure it's not a distraction." In class later, Ms. Rivera slid a small post-it onto Clara's desk. "Your art is beautiful. Don't let one voice erase that." But Clara didn't draw the rest of the day. That night she sat on her bedroom floor, knees tucked into her chest, flipping through old pages of a worn leather-bound book. Her mother's medical sketchbook. She traced her finger over the drawing of a human heart, colored in shades of blue and gray. Next to it, her mother's faded handwriting. Angina, early symptoms, fatigue, pressure in the chest, referred pain to left arm. Clara's eyes drifted to her own newest sketch, the one of Principal Mallory. She had drawn him with a hand on his chest. Then she reached for her pencil again. Long. Clara didn't speak much in class. She never had. But in the days following the assembly, she barely lifted her eyes from her desk. The halls seemed colder now. Whispers followed her like smoke. That's the girl who got roasted by the principal. She was just drawing him like a cartoon, so weird. I heard she's in trouble, like real trouble. None of it was true. But no one ever asked Clara. Her sketchbook, confiscated, silent, sat locked in Principal Mallory's office, gathering dust. Only Rivera tried to bridge the silence. After class, she gently tapped Clara's desk. "Hey, can you stay for a sec?" Clara hesitated, then nodded. When the room emptied, Ms. Rivera sat beside her, setting a book on the desk. It wasn't a textbook, but a slim volume titled The Mind in Pictures, a guide to neurodiverse learning through art and imagery. "I used to teach a student like you. Quiet. Sharp. He saw the world in still frames instead of sound bites," she said softly. "He's an architect now." Clara stared at the book cover. "They think I was just doodling," she finally whispered. "I know you weren't," Ms. Rivera replied. "I saw your drawing. It wasn't a joke. It was careful." Clara's lips trembled. "I saw him clutching his chest. I thought maybe he looked like one of the patients in my mom's hospital folder. You think he's sick? I don't know. But it didn't look right. His skin tone, it had that gray tint, like when there's not enough oxygen." Ms. Rivera blinked, startled by the depth in Clara's observation. "Your mother was a nurse. She was a medical illustrator. She used to draw conditions from real cases. I copied her books to practice." Ms. Rivera took a long breath. "You noticed symptoms of something just by watching?" Clara nodded slowly. Clara sat alone beneath the old elm tree. The next day during lunch, Clara sat alone beneath the old elm tree behind the school, knees curled, sketching quietly on scrap paper. Her new drawing was less detailed, done quickly, but again it was of Principal Mallory. This time she sketched from memory. Heavy perspiration, a slight tilt to his shoulders, as if favoring his left side. His lips pursed tight, as though holding back discomfort. She added small annotations like her mother used to. Possible angina. Look for shortness of breath. Left arm pain. She didn't notice when footsteps approached. "Hey," a voice said gently. Clara looked up, startled. It was Finn, one of the quieter boys in her science class. "That's the principal, right?" She nodded. "That looks really good. Like better than just art class stuff." Clara looked down. It's not just art. I believe you." Finn paused. "You saw something wrong with him, didn't you?" Her eyes widened. He smiled awkwardly. "I mean, you're always observing things. You see stuff the rest of us don't." A warm silence passed between them before he added, "I think that's kind of amazing." "Clara, do you have that student's sketchbook?" he asked brusquely. Ms. Rivera raised an eyebrow. "You mean Clara's?" "I received a letter from her grandmother," he said, waving a sealed envelope. "Apparently Clara has been distressed. Claims I humiliated her in front of the entire school." "Well," Ms. Rivera replied carefully, "that did happen." Mallory's jaw tightened. She was drawing during an important school-wide address. She was documenting, not doodling. She's 12. She's also observant, possibly more than you realize." He looked at her, uncertain. "You think her little drawings mean something? I think you should take a closer look at them." Mallory paused. He didn't like being told what to do, but something in Rivera's tone unsettled him. He walked away without another word. Clara sat overawed. That night, Clara sat by the window with a fresh page in front of her, drawing not people this time but the circulatory system, veins and arteries, clogged paths, pressure point. She added labels with her usual precision. Behind her, Grandma Rose watched quietly, holding a steaming mug of chamomile tea. "She'd be proud of you, you know," her grandmother said. Clara looked back, eyes glinting. "Even if nobody else sees." "Oh, sweetheart." Rose smiled gently. "Sometimes the world takes a while to catch up to the ones who see clearly." 3 weeks had passed since the school assembly, and Principal Mallory had largely forgotten about the sketch. He dismissed the grandmother's letter, ignored Ms. Rivera's suggestion, and locked the confiscated sketchbook away in his office drawer. He had more pressing matters to deal with: budget reports, parent complaints, and organizing the upcoming district-wide student showcase. It was the event of the year, and Mallory prided himself on keeping it immaculate. But there was one thing he couldn't ignore: the tightness in his chest. It started as a dull ache after lunch. He'd chalked it up to stress. Then came the shortness of breath when climbing stairs, the slight pressure that made his left arm feel oddly heavy. Still, he waved it off. He had too much to do to worry about aches and pains. Amadouessa night. It was the morning of the showcase. Students were buzzing with excitement. Parents filled the bleachers in the gymnasium. Rows of colorful displays lined up along the wall. Clara stood quietly beside her science class project, a display on blood flow and oxygenation, her hands folded in front of her, her face unreadable. Finn came up beside Stair, clutching his own project. "You okay?" Clara didn't answer at first. "I saw him again," she said quietly. "He's worse." "Mallory?" Clara nodded. "His face is paler. His left shoulder is lower. He's sweating, but it's not hot in here." Finn looked toward the principal, who was standing near the stage, adjusting a microphone. He looked flustered, red-faced, dabbing at his neck with a handkerchief. "You think it's serious? I think it's what my mom used to call a silent heart flag. When the body warns you, just not with words." Rivera noticed Clara whispering to Finn, and subtly followed her gaze. Principal Mallory now leaned heavily on the podium. His hands trembled slightly as he shuffled his note cards. A cough escaped his lips, rough and dry. His jaw was tight. Something was off. Just as she began to move toward the front, Clara stepped away from her display and walked across the gym. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait to be invited. She simply walked up to Principal Mallory and held out a folded paper, her latest sketch. He stared at her, confused. "Clara, what are you?" She opened the paper and held it up. It was a sketch of him, three-quarters view, just like he looked now, but what caught his eye were the fine lines, the red-colored shading around his jaw and chest, the notes in careful handwriting, pale lips, low oxygen, posture shift to relieve pressure on heart, perspiration not temperature-induced, and one line written in bolder ink: possible early cardiac episode, needs immediate medical evaluation. Mallory stared at it. His hands trembled. "Is this? Who told you to write this?" "No one," Clara whispered. "I've seen it before. In the hospital with my mom." Mallory looked at her, about to reply, and then everything went sideways. "Anoa!" Gasps filled the gym. "Call 911. Someone screamed. "He's having a heart attack." Chaos erupted. Teachers rushed forward, some parents screaming, students frozen in shock. Clara didn't move. She stood perfectly still, her sketch still in her hands, eyes fixed on the man who had once mocked her. Ms. Rivera reached her seconds later and knelt beside her. "You were right," she whispered. Paramedics arrived within minutes. A portable defibrillator was used. Mallory was rushed to the hospital. Unknown. Mallory was rushed to the hospital. Unknown. News of the incident spread across the district. But something else began spreading too. Rumors. Whispers. She tried to warn him. That girl, the one who draws. She predicted it. Her mom was a medical illustrator. She knew what to look for. Clara sat at the dinner table, pushing peas around her plate, while Grandma Rose read a message on her phone. "It's from Ms. Rivera," she said gently. "Principal Mallory made it through surgery. Blocked art. They said if he hadn't gotten help when he did." She didn't finish the sentence. Clara just nodded. Grandma reached over and squeezed her hand. "You saw what no one else did." I want us to acknowledge one of our students today, Clara Bennett, who many of you may have underestimated. Saved someone's life by seeing what others didn't. Her drawings weren't distractions. They were in sight. There was a pause, and from now on we celebrate different kinds of intelligence here. The quiet ones. The visual thinkers. The observers. Because sometimes seeing is saving. Clara looked down at her lap. Hands folded. Finn reached over and nudged her shoulder. Told you were amazing. For the first time in weeks. Clara smiled. The day Principal Mallory returned to school, the halls were quieter than usual. He walked slowly, one hand resting on a cane, his other gripping the railing along the ramp that had been installed outside the main entrance. One of many new inclusive access projects the school board had fast-tracked in the wake of recent events. His suit was slightly looser, his color still pale, but his eyes, once sharp and dismissive, were different now. Softer, humbled. At the main office, teachers stopped what they were doing when he entered. Even Abbott, the strict secretary known for never missing a phone call, sat frozen at her desk. No one quite knew what to say. Mallory cleared his throat, the sound scratchy but steady. Is Miss Rivera in her classroom? She is, Miss Abbott replied cautiously. He nodded and turned down the hallway. As he walked past the art room, something caught his eye. A display of student work all framed in neat rows. One drawing stood out. A delicate pencil sketch of a man gripping a podium, sweat beading his forehead. One hand subtly gripping his chest. There were no notes this time. Just a title in careful script beneath it. Things you miss when you're not looking. Mallory stood there for a long time. Clara was sitting in her usual seat, her sketchbook open, pencil in hand. She didn't look up. Miss Rivera rose. Mr. Mallory, she said, her tone even but cautious. He gave a small nod. May I speak to Clara for a moment? Miss Rivera glanced at Clara, who finally looked up, her expression unreadable. Mallory stepped forward, his voice gentle. I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to apologize. The room was still. Clara blinked slowly. I'm sorry for mocking your drawing, he said, for misunderstanding what you were trying to tell me. You saw something that could have saved my life even sooner. I didn't listen. Clara didn't answer at first. Then very quietly she said, You didn't see me. Her words hung in the air like a bell after it's rung. Mallory nodded, his jaw tight. I see you now. For the first time in years, students spoke about the principal with something resembling respect. Not because he was in charge, but because he had admitted he was wrong. That afternoon the school board held a special assembly. Parents, teachers and district officials filled the auditorium. Clara sat beside Grandma Rose and Finn near the front, her sketchbook resting in her lap. Ms. Rivera stepped up to the microphone, clearing her throat. We are gathered today to acknowledge something this school has failed to do for a long time. Recognize that intelligence, brilliance and even warnings can come in many forms. Not all of them loud. She looked directly at Clara. One of our students taught us. Polite applause began to ripple through the room. Then, to Clara's surprise, Principal Mallory stepped onto the stage. He didn't bring his usual stack of note cards. He simply spoke. 3 weeks ago I mocked a student in front of her peers for drawing during an assembly. What I didn't know was that her drawing wasn't just a sketch. It was a warning. And when she tried to share it with me, I didn't just ignore her. I dismissed her value entirely. He looked down, then back up, his voice breaking slightly. I nearly died because I didn't understand that not all brilliance looks like mine. The auditorium was silent. I stand here today because of Clara Bennett, and I am committed to making sure no student like her is ever overlooked again. Applause filled the room, not the polite kind, but the raw, rising kind that carries both admiration and regret. Clara didn't cry, she just looked down at her sketchbook and started to draw. The next week, the school implemented a brand new neurodiverse enrichment program, led by Miss Rivera. Clara's artwork was chosen as the emblem for the initiative, a heart drawn in cross-section, surrounded by watchful eyes and blooming flowers. The title, Different Minds, Shared World. But perhaps the most meaningful change came quietly. One day after lunch, Clara found an envelope tucked inside her desk. No name, no stamp, just a folded piece of heavy cream paper. Inside was a note. Some people shout to be heard. You whisper, and the world listens now. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Or Mallory. The seasons shifted. By late spring, Clara's name had quietly become a part of school history, not as a headline, not as gossip, but as a quiet ripple of change that reshaped how people looked at one another. In the art room, students now sat in clusters. Sketchbooks open not just with dragons and flowers but with diagrams, maps and emotions they didn't know how to put into words. Ms. Rivera often said, art is more than expression, it's translation, and Clara had become proof of that. She still didn't speak much in class, still preferred the corner seat, still avoided eye contact with most. But there was a difference now. When she walked down the hallway, students didn't stare or whisper. They waited. Some even showed her their doodles or asked if she could help shade a nose or fix a hand. One boy left a pack of her favorite pencils on her desk with a sticky note. For the coolest brain in the room, Clara didn't respond out loud. She didn't need to. Her smile was enough. At home, the walls of her bedroom, once crowded with medical diagrams and sketches, now displayed new drawings, a bird mid-flight, a pair of clasped hands, a tall man at a podium with a faint shadow behind him. Grandma Rose noted. You're not just observing now, she said one evening, handing Clara a cup of tea. You're remembering, processing. Clara looked up and nodded slowly. There were still moments when the grief surfaced, when she'd stumble on an old note from her mom or hear a song that had played in the hospital room during those final days. But there was less pain now, less weight. The drawing that saved a life had also helped her let go of on. Thursday morning, Clara was called into the school board office. Not for trouble, but for something official. Finn waited with her in the hallway, legs bouncing. Do you think they're giving you an award or like a mural or something? He asked, barely hiding his excitement. Clara shrugged. Maybe they just need someone to fix the perspective in the cafeteria posters. Finn laughed. Principal Mallory opened the door and motioned them in. He looked healthier now, though his gait still had a slight hesitation. Inside, a group of people sat around a long table. There was Ms. Rivera, a school board official, and a representative from the state's Department of Education. Principal Mallory cleared his throat. Clara, this won't take long. We're here to present you with the Emerging Voice in Youth Arts and Advocacy Award. A statewide honor. Your drawing and what it represented moved beyond our school. It's now being shared with educators across the country, as part of training on neurodiversity and student communication. Clara blinked. Slowly, her fingers tightened around the straps of her backpack. There's also a scholarship, the official added, sliding an envelope toward her, to a summer program at the Youth Medical Arts Institute. If you're interested. Finn clapped like a maniac. Ms. Rivera beamed. And Principal Mallory, well, he just smiled quietly, the way someone smiles when they've finally done something right. Instead, she picked up her pencil and began to draw. This one took longer than usual. A woman, strong and kind, with a stethoscope slung around her neck, sat at a table, sketching a diagram of a heart beside her. A little girl watched, eyes wide with wonder, pencil in hand, mimicking every curve. At the bottom of the page she wrote, "You saw me first. On final day of school." Clara stood with Finn beneath the blooming magnolia tree behind the library. He kicked at the dirt. So do you think next year will be weird? Clara smiled slightly. Probably. But maybe good weird. They stood in silence for a bit, letting the wind do the talking. Then Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Open it after I leave, she said, handing it to him before walking toward Grandma Rose's waiting car. Finn watched her go, then unfolded the page. It was a drawing of him, sitting beside her, talking with his hands, while she sketched in silence. In the background were faint outlines of students, teachers, and hallways, but everything was drawn through a translucent lens like glass being wiped clean. At the bottom, in Clara's neat handwriting, it read, "Sometimes it takes one person listening to help the world finally see." What is lesson of this story? Break. 1. Everyone's mind works differently. And that's not a flaw, it's a gift. 2. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the deepest wisdom. 3. Judgment can blind us. Empathy opens our eyes. 4. Never underestimate someone just because they express the world differently. 5. What we dismiss today may be what saves us tomorrow. Encourage viewers to reflect. Who around you might have an unseen strength or story? What might change if you really stopped to look and listen? Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any interesting stories.